לא יולך המלאכה לגמור ולא יתו בן חוידן להיבוטל ממנו אם למדתו תוירו הרבה נסנים לך זכור הרבה.
So regarding drinking what we call Mashke, or saying L'chaim and Farbrengens, I think there's a big misconception here. In the larger world, alcohol is seen as a high, or a low actually. But in some way it alters your consciousness, makes you looser, makes you more comfortable, takes off the edge. You know, Americans are prone to drinking once, twice, 3 times, 5 times every day in the morning and in the evening. You see it in culture, you see it in the media and so on. We don't call it alcohol. We call it l'chaim. We call it mashke. Mashke means to pour. It's a transmission. L'chaim means to life. It was never meant to be a stimulant, to get someone to be high, to get someone to be more spiritually sensitive, to get someone to be uninhibited. It was always a means to somewhat, yes, to minimize. It was expressed like mashkenes a behema was the expression. You pour water on the behema, on the animal, to soften it up. But the objective was always to connect to God and to connect to your own soul and to connect to spiritual and transcendent experiences naturally. And mashke was a means that sometimes helped out. But as soon as it became something, especially in culture, that became an end in itself, the Rebbe made it very clear, and that's why he made the decree, the gzeira, that not to drink more than 4 small cups. And when he was asked, what can 4 small cups accomplish? He says, you're right. The whole thing is just token. It was never meant to be a force where people start saying, do you like Geller or Weisse? In other words, it became something that people have a taste in. You're not supposed to have a taste. It was always meant to be, as the Rebbe said, a dover mos. It means something that's despicable. When people get too comfortable with drinking, you're right, it's already a sign there's a problem. So the point I want to make is in Judaism and in any healthy spirit, the real way to reach any high is through your own effort and through your own opening up. There was a time in maybe a purer, more naive world where l'chaim and mashke was used as well to somewhat weaken and tame the resistance, but today that's not acceptable. The Rebbe, who's the ultimate authority, said that, and drives the point home that it's only a means, and even at that, at bare minimum. And the fact of the matter is that if people are dedicated and committed, they can open up to each other at a farbrengen and talk to each other, and they can do it over a cup of water too, and they can do it in other fashion and other means. You want it to be a token type of l'chaim, like we say Kiddush, Shabbos, and so on. That's one thing, but not in a way that actually gets you intoxicated and to the point where you lack control of your own faculties. Now, since there is in the Torah the concept of drinking wine or sometimes alcohol, yayin saraf as they call it, so at least we have a Torah sanction for the possibility on a minimal level. Weed was never something part of Torah, part of any traditional approach. So my answer is twofold, the difference between weed. Number one is, today alcohol and marijuana, alcohol and drugs are very equatable because they're both being seen as the tools that people are using, even if they're using it for transcendent purposes. I should add that many people drink and smoke weed not because they want to reach any transcendence, because they simply want to feel better. We don't use substances to transcend, not alcohol and not weed. My main point I want to make is that today, alcohol and drugs, I would all throw into the same category. These are recreational, social drugs and social tools, people to be able to be less inhibited, completely nothing to do with divine inspiration, becoming a more selfless person, reaching higher transcendent levels. It's a vote of confidence in the human spirit. You have everything in your soul that's necessary for you to reach the highest levels of awareness and consciousness. You don't need to ingest anything, you don't need to smoke anything in order to get to that place. There's a beautiful prayer we say every morning. It says, the soul you have given me is pure. And the Kabbalists and the Hasidic masters explain, what does pure mean? That your soul is connected to the highest levels of the cosmic energies. And you don't need anything to help you get there. So the concept that we need a crutch or some escape or some other form of assistance to reach spiritual high is essentially really contaminating and toxifying the experience. It would be like someone saying, I want to run a marathon. You run a marathon by conditioning yourself, practicing, exercising until you do it. You don't use, as we know, even in the world of sports, you don't use drugs, and they're forbidden. You have to do it naturally. Why? Because besides the fact that it gives you unfair advantage, but most importantly, excel with your own skills. Why are you using artificial tools, tricks, so to speak? And Judaism is very pure in that sense. Experience your spiritual journey in a pure way. Don't rely on other items. Point number 2 is escapism is never healthy for a human being. Escapism is essentially avoiding the realities of life. We all have times of pain. We have times of distress, sometimes of anxiety. And escapism basically immunizes you and numbs you from the natural cycles of life. It's like a person doesn't want to experience winter. They only want summer. It doesn't work that way. Natural cycles of life is there's ups and downs. The cardiologist, he says to me, Rabbi, maybe one day you could help and intervene and have God give me one day of total peace. So half humorously I said to him, you mean like a straight line? She said, no. We all know a flat line in a cardiogram is death. What does a healthy heart look like? It's a wave. Ups and downs, a constant wave. That's life, mobility. So imagine a person that says, I don't want to have the down, I only want to have the up. Taking artificial ways of trying to numb ourselves from the ups and downs of life. That's not a healthy person. Obviously, we want to avoid extreme peaks or deep valleys, means extreme manic or extreme highs and very low depression. But it's healthy to have angst, to feel somewhat restless, to feel like a flame, a flickering flame. That's the nature of the soul. It's like a flame. You're always looking to reach and grow higher. Once you numb yourself, what happens is you're losing touch with your own humanity and you're betraying your own spiritual destiny, but not really allowing yourself to experience the entire spectrum of life's ups and downs and life's twists and turns. The Torah has actually a story. We have the story of the 2 sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu. In their ecstasy and their excitement and their passion, the first day the temple was established, they came running in. And what happened? It says a strange fire consumed them. Interesting expression, strange fire, an alien fire. And they died. They died with good intentions. They wanted to have a spiritual experience. There are different opinions. What did they do wrong? One of them says they were intoxicated. And that's why afterwards, God tells Moses to tell Aaron, now that your sons have died, now I will tell you how you enter the Holy of Holies in the right way. And it says, Yayin v'shecher al tesht. You shall not drink wine or beer. You shall not drink intoxicating drinks. Only in a limited way. We make Kiddush, Shabbos, or holidays. There are times when we say L'chaim, but in a very limited way. And actually, those that did drink it the wrong way, and they were good people, they were high, great people, they sanctified God's name. But it became too self-indulgent. So you see how the Torah, even with a drink, like wine, which is considered a sacred drink, and we make Kiddush on wine, and we drink the 4 cups on Passover, by Pri Hagofen, and it has that effect on us. But it was never because of the effect. There's only one God. You want to experience God, go to God. Don't go to wine, don't go to alcohol, don't go to drugs. That's not the approach. And even people have good intentions, and they were definitely not so-called addicts. Even they ultimately were consumed by it, and it says an alien fire. Interesting. Sometimes drugs is used as that word, a foreign fire, alien fire, strange fire. That was the word. They were the first burnout in history is the sons of Aaron in the chapter in Leviticus that talks about it. There are tremendous lessons you can learn from it. So I want to sum up again just to make it clear. It's never as an end in itself, any type of alcohol or drug. It never. There's only one end. We do not find tricks or quick fixes how to get to an experience. I know many people, for instance, that have had LSD experiences and actually brought them to God. I know people today that are committed Jews who came to it, they'll say, through LSD. And I remember once a person telling me, that I stopped putting on film, I stopped keeping Shabbos, and when I had my first acid trip, and I used to have LSD trips, psychedelic trips, it brought me back to my Judaism. What do you think about that? So I responded to him, imagine someone who's fallen to a coma, and the doctors have given hope, and the only thing they have left is a massive dose of drugs that may shock his system. And he gets revived, he comes out of the coma. So what would you suggest? That every time somebody has a need, you give them a massive dose of drugs? Obviously not. So maybe due to the fact that people are in a spiritual coma, God allowed for one time, or a trick of the trade, so to speak, to find in Far East, whether through Buddhism or through psychedelics, to open them up to the possibility. But then once you've discovered God, you could say goodbye to all these, because they were never really meant to be an end in themselves. So I am not going to criticize someone that found God through other means. But to say that should be the natural approach, that should be the initial way, absolutely not. Someone in a coma may need that. But everyone else, there are natural ways to do this. That you study spiritual Jewish mysticism, spirituality, Chassidus, and it teaches you how to get to the place like that. Now, the fact that sometimes you find the use of mashke or the use of wine, as I said, in a minimal way and never as an end in itself. What it says in the Torah about that the human being has dominion over all kingdoms of the world, of all species, including mineral, inanimate, vegetable, and animal, dominion does not mean you have to consume everything that you dominate over. There are poisonous mushrooms, and there are poisonous foods, and there are things that we should never consume. So no one's going to suggest, no one's going to go swallow stones and ingest them just because they exist. So we have to be wise. When it says that a human being has dominion, means that they have the capacity to elevate, to refine, to unite and connect all segments and all elements of this world toward a higher purpose. Some of the things we do in a way through ingestion, yes, healthy foods and healthy drink that nourishes the body. But unhealthy foods, forget about now drugs and alcohol. Unhealthy foods is not something we should be consuming. And the same thing is with things from the vegetable world. Not just because it exists doesn't mean you have to be smoking it or ingesting it. So we do so, I would say, primarily through two main things. Number one is cognitive meditation. And that's through studying about your soul to the point that it resonates with you. So we have a whole body of literature, it's called Chassidus. A lot of it is based on Kabbalistic thought that maps out, we'll call it the spiritual genome. It maps out your soul. What does your soul look like? The different levels of the soul, and how you climb from one level to the next. Awareness is the first step to any type of growth. So we're being aware of your soul. It's like being aware of your body. So you have an x-ray of the body, there's an x-ray of the soul. Do you know, for example, the soul has 5 dimensions? The biological element of the soul, the emotional element, there's the intellectual, there's the transcendent, and there's that oneness. It's called Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, Yechid. And they correspond to different spiritual realms. So when you study this, you become aware of the spirituality, and when you're aware of it, it becomes easier to experience it. The second step in this process, what we call tefillah, prayer, is an emotional. I mentioned a cognitive, now an emotional type of conditioning. Cognitive conditioning and emotional conditioning. Unfortunately, prayer is like a lost art, but prayer is essentially learning how to emote and how to emotionally be vulnerable and how to emotionally connect to higher spiritual realms. So what does a person do when they pray? They shut their eyes, basically. Like by the Shema, we cover our eyes. We shut out the world around us. We create a little oasis, what people call today mindfulness or other forms of meditation. This is what prayer was always, create a little oasis, shut off the outside noises of the world, shut down your senses as much as possible, and try to experience your inner self. So prayer is essentially the emotional way of conditioning yourself consistently with the cognitive conditioning that comes through study. And these ways, these methods actually work. They can help you literally reach levels that are unprecedented, understanding new possibilities, see the horizons and the beautiful potential that you carry within yourself. Learn to sing your own song. And obviously doing this with a mentor, with a teacher, with someone that knows their way, can help guide you. But it's not something difficult to master once you really go through the steps.
למדתו תוידו הרבה 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 ניסנים לך סחור הרבה